My name is Robert Harrison, and at 60 years old, I thought I knew everything there was to know about my wife of 35 years. Melinda and I had built what seemed like a perfect life together in our colonial home in suburban Cleveland. 2 successful children, 4 grandchildren, and a marriage that everyone in our neighborhood envied. I was wrong about everything. It all started on a cold Saturday morning in March when I finally decided to tackle the attic cleanup I'd been postponing for months. Melinda had driven to Chicago to visit her sister Patricia for the weekend, or so she said. I'd grown used to her frequent trips over the years, always trusting her completely. The attic was a maze of forgotten memories. Christmas decorations from the 1980s, our children's baby clothes, old tax documents, and dusty furniture we couldn't bear to throw away. I was moving an antique wardrobe that had belonged to Melinda's grandmother when I noticed something odd behind it, a loose floorboard. Curiosity got the better of me. I pried up the board with a screwdriver and found a small cavity underneath. Inside was a metal lockbox, the kind people use for important documents. It was locked, but the key was taped to the bottom. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were 4 leather photo albums, each one meticulously labeled with different years and what appeared to be men's names: Christopher 1988 to 1992, Marcus 1994 to 1998, Vincent 2001 to 2005, and Alexander 2008 to 2012. The first album nearly knocked the wind out of me. The cover photo showed my young wife, maybe 25 years old, in a white sundress on a beach I didn't recognize. She was laughing, her arms wrapped around a tall, dark-haired man who was kissing her cheek. They looked like honeymooners. I opened to the first page and my world shattered. Miami Beach, 1988. The photos showed Melinda and this Christopher character in various romantic poses, sharing cocktails at sunset, dancing at what looked like a fancy club, lying together on beach chairs. The intimacy was undeniable. But what made my blood run cold was the date. March 1988. That was just 3 years after we'd gotten married, when our son Jason was only 2 years old. I remembered that month clearly. Melinda had told me she was going to a work conference in Atlanta. I'd even picked out a souvenir t-shirt I wanted her to bring back for Jason. I flipped through page after page of lies. The Bahamas, where they looked tanned and blissful. New York City, where they posed in front of the Statue of Liberty like tourists in love. Key West, where she wore a bikini I'd never seen before. Each photo was carefully mounted with captions in her handwriting: Christopher and me at our favorite restaurant, perfect day in paradise, wish this could last forever. The album covered 4 years of deception. 4 years when I was working 60-hour weeks as a mechanical engineer, coming home exhausted to help with dinner and bedtime stories, while my wife was living a double life with another man. At the back of the album I found something that made me physically ill: love letters. Not just casual notes, but passionate, detailed letters that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. One dated December 1991 read, "My darling Christopher, I count the days until our next escape together. You make me feel alive in ways I'd forgotten were possible." I had to stop reading and rush to the bathroom to vomit. When I composed myself, I returned to the lockbox with a morbid curiosity. The second album, Marcus 1994 to 1998, showed a completely different man, blonde, athletic, younger than Christopher. The pattern was the same: romantic destinations, intimate poses, obvious deception. But this time the locations were more exotic: Hawaii, Bermuda, the Caribbean islands. 1994 to 1998. Those were the years when Jason was in middle school and our daughter Rebecca was in elementary school. I remembered Melinda's sudden interest in professional development conferences and girls' trips with college friends. I'd supported her completely, even encouraged her to take time for herself. I was such a fool. The photos with Marcus showed a progression I hadn't seen in the Christopher album. They looked more adventurous, more reckless. There were pictures of them bungee jumping, scuba diving, even what looked like a hot air balloon ride. In one photo she was wearing a diamond bracelet I'd never seen. In another they were clearly in a hotel room, and while the photo itself wasn't explicit, the implication was unmistakable. The love letters in this album were even more devastating. One from 1996, "Marcus, my sweet boy, I've never felt so young and free. When I'm with you, I forget about my real life entirely." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the pages. But I had to see it all. I had to know the full extent of my wife's betrayal. The third album, Vincent 2001 to 2005, featured a sophisticated older man with gray temples and expensive clothes. The photos showed them at wine tastings in Napa Valley, art galleries in San Francisco, Broadway shows in New York. This relationship seemed more cultured, more refined than the previous two. 2001 to 2005. Rebecca was in high school then, Jason was in college. I remembered Melinda joining a wine appreciation club and developing sudden interests in art and theater. She'd started dressing more elegantly, wearing perfumes I didn't recognize. When I complimented her new sophisticated tastes, she'd smile mysteriously and say she was exploring new sides of herself. Now I knew what she meant. The photos with Vincent were more intimate in a different way. They weren't just physical, they were emotional. There were pictures of them reading together on what looked like a private yacht, sharing quiet moments in expensive restaurants, walking hand in hand through what appeared to be European cities. The letters in this album revealed the depth of her deception had reached new levels. Vincent was apparently married too, and their correspondence discussed elaborate schemes to spend time together without arousing suspicion from their respective spouses. One letter from Melinda dated 2003 read, "Vincent, my intellectual soulmate, I've convinced Robert that I need to attend monthly book club retreats. He's so proud of my literary interests that he never questions where these retreats take place. We're so clever, aren't we?" I realized with horror that I had indeed praised her for her newfound love of literature during those years. I'd even bought her expensive books for Christmas, never realizing they were props in her elaborate deception. The final album was the most recent, Alexander 2008 to 2012. This man was younger again, probably in his 30s, with the kind of rugged good looks you'd see in adventure magazines. The photos showed them hiking in national parks, skiing in Colorado, whitewater rafting, rock climbing. 2008 to 2012. Those were supposed to be our golden years as empty nesters. Rebecca had graduated college and started her career. Jason was established in his own life. Melinda had suddenly developed a passion for outdoor adventures and fitness challenges. She joined hiking groups and started taking solo trips to national parks. I'd been so proud of her for staying active and pursuing new interests. The photos told a different story. These weren't solo adventures or group activities. Every picture showed her with Alexander, looking 20 years younger, radiating a happiness I realized I hadn't seen in her face when she was with me in years. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. At the bottom of the lockbox was a fifth item, a manila envelope marked current. Inside were printed emails and text message screenshots dating from just last month. She was still at it. The messages were between Melinda and someone named D, apparently her latest conquest. The texts were casual but clearly romantic. "Can't wait to see you next weekend. Told her I'm visiting Patricia again." And his response, "Your sister sure is needy, winking face. I've booked our usual suite at the Marriott." I sat on the dusty attic floor, surrounded by 35 years of marriage I thought I knew, holding evidence of a woman I'd never actually met. The Melinda who came home to me each day, who cooked dinner and asked about my day, who attended PTA meetings and helped plan neighborhood barbecues. She was an actress playing a role. The real Melinda was someone who craved excitement, adventure, and passion with a series of men who weren't me. She was someone who could look me in the eyes and lie effortlessly year after year, decade after decade. I thought about all the times I'd worried when she was late coming home from her book club or hiking group. All the times I'd offered to come with her on trips, only to be told it was girls only, or I need some solo time to recharge. All the anniversary dinners where she seemed distracted, checking her phone constantly. The phone. I grabbed my cell and called Patricia in Chicago. "Hey Robert. How are you? Is Melinda having a good time? We're all looking forward to seeing her." My blood turned to ice. "Patricia, isn't Melinda visiting you this weekend?" "No honey, I haven't seen Melinda in months. We talked about her visiting, but she said she couldn't make it this weekend." "Why?" I hung up without explanation and immediately called Melinda's cell. It went straight to voicemail, the same voicemail that had been greeting me all weekend when I tried to check in with her. She wasn't with her sister. She was with D, whoever that was, at some hotel, continuing the same pattern of deception she'd been perfecting for over 30 years. I spent the rest of the weekend going through every album page by page, reading every letter, memorizing every detail. I needed to understand the full scope of what my marriage had actually been. By Sunday evening, I had a timeline that revealed the truth. Melinda had never been faithful to me. Not once in our 35 years together. There had been overlapping relationships, brief gaps between lovers, but never a period where she was committed only to our marriage. The woman I'd trusted with my heart, my life, my children, had been systematically betraying that trust from almost the very beginning. When Melinda's car pulled into our driveway Sunday night, I was sitting in the living room with all 5 albums spread out on the coffee table. I turned off all the lights except one lamp, creating an almost interrogation-like atmosphere. She walked in chattering about her wonderful weekend with Patricia, full of stories about restaurants they'd visited and movies they'd watched. She was in the middle of describing some fictional brunch when she saw me sitting in the dim light. "Robert? Why are you sitting in the dark? And what are those?" Her voice trailed off as she recognized the albums. The color drained from her face completely. She actually swayed on her feet, grabbing the doorframe for support. "How? Where did you find those? Does it matter?" My voice was surprisingly calm. "The question is, which story would you like to tell me first? Christopher from the late 80s? Marcus from the 90s? Vincent from the early 2000s? Alexander from 2008 to 2012? Or should we start with D and your current fiction about visiting Patricia?" She collapsed into a chair across from me, looking older than I'd ever seen her look. "Robert, please let me explain. 35 years, Melinda. 35 years of lies. Do you understand what you've done? Do you comprehend the magnitude of this betrayal?" She started crying, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no urge to comfort her. Those tears had been used to manipulate me too many times before, though I'd never realized it. It wasn't like that. I did love you, I do love you. These other relationships, they were separate from us. Separate? I opened the Christopher album to a photo of them in bed together, tastefully cropped but unmistakably intimate. 4 years with Christopher while I was working myself to death to support our young family. That was separate. I flipped to the Marcus album. 5 years with Marcus while our children were growing up, needing their mother's attention. But you were too busy bungee jumping in New Zealand with your boyfriend to be fully present for them. That was separate. The Vincent album came next. Vincent, your intellectual soulmate. You convinced me you'd developed sophisticated cultural interests, when really you were just copying his taste. That was separate. Finally, Alexander. And Alexander, your adventure buddy. All those solo hiking trips I was so proud of you for taking. More lies. That was separate. Please, Robert, you're taking this out of context. Context. I stood up, my composure finally cracking. The context is that our entire marriage has been a lie. The woman I fell in love with, the woman I married, the woman I thought was the mother of my children. She never existed. I grabbed the manila envelope with the recent messages. And you're still doing it? This weekend, while I was up in our attic discovering the truth about my life, you were at a hotel with another man, texting about how easy it is to deceive your stupid husband Robert. She was sobbing now, but I was past the point of caring. Who is D, Melinda? What's his real name? Is he married too? Does his wife know she's living the same lie I've been living? His name is Daniel, she whispered. Daniel Morrison. And yes, he's married. The name meant nothing to me, which somehow made it worse. This wasn't even someone I knew, someone I could hate for a specific reason. It was just another in a long line of men who meant more to my wife than I did. How long? What? How long with Daniel? About 6 months. 6 months. I sat back down, suddenly exhausted. So Alexander ended in 2012, and it took you 4 years to find Daniel. Were there others in between, or did you actually manage 4 years of fidelity? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I want you to leave. Robert, please, we can work through this. Leave. Tonight. Go to Daniel, go to Patricia, go anywhere. But don't sleep in my house tonight. This is my house too. No, I said quietly. This house belongs to Robert and Melinda Harrison, a couple that never actually existed. You can come back tomorrow to get some things, but I want you gone tonight. She tried to argue, tried to plead, tried to bargain. But I was done. 35 years of being fooled was enough. After she left, I called our children. Jason was shocked into silence. Rebecca, always more emotional, started crying immediately. Both of them wanted to see the evidence for themselves, so I asked them to come over the next evening for what would be the most difficult family meeting of our lives. The next day passed in a blur. Melinda came by while I was at work and took a suitcase full of clothes. She left a note saying she was staying at a hotel and wanted to talk when I was ready to be rational. Rational. As if there was a rational response to discovering that your entire adult life had been based on lies. That evening, Jason and Rebecca came over with their spouses. I'd thought long and hard about whether to show them everything, but I decided they deserved to know the truth about their mother. They were adults with children of their own. They could handle the reality of who Melinda really was. I started with the Christopher album, explaining the timeline and what it meant. Jason, always the analytical one, immediately grasped the implications. So when you were working 2 jobs to pay for our house, Mom was in Miami with another man? Among other places, yes. Rebecca was looking at a photo of their mother and Christopher at what appeared to be a couple's spa retreat. I remember you being gone a lot when I was little. I remember asking Dad where you were, and he always said you were working hard to help provide for our family. I showed them the Marcus album next. By now both of my children looked sick. The hiking phase, Jason said bitterly. I remember being so confused about why Mom suddenly wanted to climb mountains. It seemed so unlike her. Because it wasn't her, Rebecca added. It was just another role she was playing. When I showed them the Vincent album, Rebecca started crying. Those book club retreats. I was in high school and I was so proud that my mom was intellectual and sophisticated. I bragged to my friends about how cultured she was. And I helped pay for those retreats, I said. Encouraged them even. I thought they were good for her personal growth. The Alexander album was almost too much for them. Jason had to step outside for air when he saw photos of their mother looking blissfully happy in ways he'd never seen at home. She looked so alive in these pictures, Rebecca whispered. Like a completely different person. She was a completely different person. The person she was with us was the act. When I showed them the recent messages with Daniel, both of my children looked at me with pity that broke my heart. They could see what this discovery had done to me, how it had shattered not just my marriage but my understanding of my own life. What are you going to do, Dad? Jason asked. Divorce her. There's no coming back from this. This isn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. This is a systematic pattern of deception that spans our entire marriage. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I keep thinking about all the times I felt like Mom was distracted when I needed her. All the important events where she seemed like her mind was somewhere else. Now I know where her mind was. I remember asking her to help with a science project once, Jason added. She said she was too busy preparing for a book club discussion. I felt so guilty for taking her away from something intellectual and important. Turns out she was probably writing love letters to Vincent. We sat in painful silence for a while, processing the magnitude of Melinda's betrayal. It wasn't just against me, it was against our entire family, against the life we thought we'd built together. Have you talked to a lawyer? Rebecca asked. I have an appointment tomorrow morning. Good, Jason said firmly. Mom made her choices for 35 years. Now she has to live with the consequences. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal consultations, financial planning, and practical arrangements. Ohio is a no-fault divorce state, which meant Melinda's adultery wouldn't affect the property division, but I didn't care about the money anymore. I just wanted out. Melinda called repeatedly, begging for a chance to explain, to make things right. She sent flowers, left voicemails, even showed up at my office once. But what was there to explain? What could she possibly say that would justify 3 decades of systematic deception? The hardest part was telling the grandchildren. How do you explain to a 10-year-old why Grandma and Grandpa are getting divorced? How do you maintain their love and respect for their grandmother while being honest about why the family is falling apart? We decided on a simplified version of the truth. Grandma had not been honest about some important things, and Grandpa couldn't stay married to someone he couldn't trust. The older grandchildren asked more pointed questions, but we navigated those as gently as possible. 3 weeks after my discovery, I moved into a furnished apartment across town. The divorce paperwork was filed, and Melinda was served at the hotel where she'd been staying. According to my lawyer, she'd initially wanted to fight for alimony and half of everything, but when her attorney learned about the albums and the evidence of her affairs, they advised her to accept my generous settlement offer and avoid a public trial. I learned from mutual friends that she'd moved in with Daniel Morrison, though apparently his wife had found out about their affair and kicked him out too. 2 marriages destroyed by their selfish pursuit of excitement and novelty. The strangest part of this whole experience has been realizing how much of my life I need to re-examine. Every memory I have of our marriage is now suspect. Was she thinking about Christopher during our 10th anniversary dinner? Was she comparing me to Marcus when we made love? Was she texting Vincent while she helped Rebecca with homework? I've started seeing a therapist to help process the psychological impact of discovering that my life partner was essentially a stranger. She's helping me understand that this level of deception creates a unique kind of trauma. It's not just the betrayal, it's the complete invalidation of your own perception of reality. Some days I feel angry, raging at the time I wasted, the trust one gave to someone who never deserved it. Other days I feel almost relieved, understanding finally why I always felt like something was missing in our marriage, why Melinda always seemed like she was holding part of herself back. The divorce was finalized 6 months after I found the albums. 35 years of marriage ended with a judge's signature and a stack of papers. Melinda didn't contest anything in the end. I think even she understood that fighting would only make the details of her deception more public. At the hearing, she tried to approach me to say something that might have been an apology. But I walked past her without acknowledgement. There was nothing she could say that would matter anymore. I kept one photo from all those albums, not because I wanted to remember her affairs, but because I wanted to remember the lesson. It's a picture from the Christopher album showing her laughing at some seaside restaurant, looking genuinely happy in a way I realize now she never looked with me. I keep it on my desk as a reminder that people are capable of extraordinary deception, and that trust, once broken so completely, can never be repaired. Jason and Rebecca have been incredibly supportive through this process. They've made it clear that while they'll maintain a relationship with their mother for the sake of the grandchildren, they understand why I cannot. They've seen the evidence of her betrayal, and they know that forgiveness isn't always possible or appropriate. Today, 1 year after finding those albums, I'm building a new life. I've started dating again, something I never thought I'd do at 61. I'm honest with the women I meet about what happened to my marriage, and I'm amazed by how many of them have similar stories of betrayal and deception. I've also reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage years. I realize now that Melinda had subtly discouraged many of these friendships, probably because she was afraid someone might notice her absences or question her stories. The house is for sale. I can't live in a place where so many memories have been revealed as lies. My new apartment is smaller but feels more honest. Every piece of furniture, every decoration, every book represents the real me, not the man I was pretending to be in a marriage that was pretending to exist. Some people have asked if I regret finding those albums, if I would have preferred to live in ignorance for whatever years I had left. The answer is absolutely not. Living a lie, even a comfortable lie, isn't really living at all. Melinda is apparently still with Daniel Morrison, though I've heard through mutual acquaintances that their relationship is troubled. It turns out that when you build a relationship on deception and betrayal, it's hard to trust each other. Who could have predicted that? I don't hate her anymore. I've moved past anger into something more like pity. She spent 35 years creating elaborate fantasies instead of working on the real relationship she had. She chose excitement over intimacy, novelty over depth, and deception over honesty. In the end, she lost a husband who truly loved her and a family who respected her, all for a series of affairs that ultimately meant nothing. The saddest part is that if she had been honest about her unhappiness, about wanting more adventure or passion in her life, we might have been able to work on our marriage together. We might have traveled more, tried new experiences, found ways to rekindle excitement within our relationship. Instead, she chose the path of lies and betrayal, and now she's 61 years old, starting over with a man who's already proven he's willing to cheat on his spouse. I don't envy her that future. As for me, I'm learning what it means to be truly authentic for the first time in decades. I'm pursuing interests I'd set aside during my marriage years, traveling to places Melinda never wanted to visit, making decisions based solely on what I want rather than what would maintain our fictional harmony. It's terrifying and liberating in equal measure. At 61, I'm finally getting to know who Robert Harrison really is, separate from the role I played as Melinda's unknowing accomplice in her decades-long deception. The albums are locked away now in a safety deposit box at the bank. I may never look at them again, but I keep them as evidence, not for any legal purpose, but as proof to myself that what I discovered was real, that my decision to end the marriage was justified. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I wonder about the women in those other men's lives. Christopher's wife, Marcus's girlfriend, Vincent's spouse, Alexander's partner, Daniel's ex-wife. How many of us were living lies without knowing it? How many marriages were damaged by my wife's selfish pursuit of excitement? But mostly I look forward. At 61, I have perhaps 20 or 25 good years left. I refuse to waste them mourning a marriage that was never real or a woman who was never who she pretended to be. The truth, as painful as it was to discover, has set me free. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Maybe YouTube will no longer offer you my channel, so subscribe to it by clicking subscribe on the right under the video to receive new interesting stories. Also on the right of the video there is a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to, and you can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.